Part of the immersion of games is believing you're in a virtual world, but it's still possible to be delusional there. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 things gamers trick themselves into believing. Starting off at number 10, it is blaming the Mario Kart track for your lack of skill. Now, Mario Kart isn't the easiest game of all time. It's not the hardest either, but, well, let's just say I've seen more than a few people get particularly angry at the Mario Kart track. You know, they mess up, hit an obstacle, don't take a corner right, and it's the game's fault. It's the track's fault. It's the stupid track. You can learn the track. You can learn to play the game better. And there are a lot of people who, well, go through those tracks without having problems. Now, it's important to understand that this does not apply to Rainbow Road, which is evil. The person who designed it has no soul, and all of the things that it randomly does to you, which have nothing to do with your skill, genuinely, are definitely not what we're talking about here. But basically any other track, you mess up on it, it's kind of your fault. You can predict everything that's going to happen. You can memorize it. Like I said, just get better at the track. Stop fooling yourself. At number 9, the idea that your favorite studio can do no wrong. Now, we have seen this very recently. There are a lot of CD Projekt Red fans who just absolutely love everything CD Projekt Red does, which is, there's nothing wrong with enjoying things. However, pushing it to the point where you think that there is nothing wrong with Cyberpunk 2077 and defend it endlessly on forums all day long, as much as I would say that Cyberpunk is rife with problems, some of which that have been fixed since launch, some that haven't, I would say it is you that has the problem here. But sometimes it's not even based on a track record. That's when it's really weird. There were people that were defending No Man's Sky at launch just based off of the hype cycle, which is insane. Don't even get me started on Star Citizen. We've done videos about what is going on with Star Citizen. That crap's a friggin' cult. Forget Dreamworld. Forget tricking yourselves into believing stuff. In fact, a lot of crowdfunding projects end up turning into this thing. The guys that I put my time and money into, they couldn't do anything wrong, ever. And that's kind of exactly what it is. People do invest their time and money into these things, and eventually at some point there is a sunk cost fallacy here. Snap out of it, Star Citizen crowdfunders. At number 8, the idea that you could beat them if you just went another round. Like, let's say you're playing FIFA or a fighting game or something, and you're playing against somebody else, and you feel like you would beat the other person if only you'd match again with them and fight them again, and that he just simply got lucky. Or let's say it's somebody you know, and they just beat the living tar out of you, and you start saying things like, best of 3, best of 5, best of 10. I mean, this is one I think a lot of people end up doing. Probably everybody at least at some point. But a gamer with some amount of humility will realize that maybe the other person is actually just better than you. That is not necessarily a bad thing. It is a long way to the top, and once you get there, everyone is gunning for you. Here in the middle, things are much better, I promise you. That's not actually the point. The actual point is that people who spend lots of time getting good at a game, that's a great thing, and you can do it too. You are in no way locked out of getting good at a game, and telling yourself you would just beat that person if you played against them again, that kind of thinking kind of locks you out of it. Just play the game, enjoy the game, take the game seriously. At number 7, the idea that if you just had more time, you would practice more and you'd get better and you'd beat this guy. Whoever this guy is, whether this guy is another player, whether this guy is a boss, whatever. The thing is, if you have a busy life, wishing for more time is not going to bring you more time. People who fantasize about having more time are usually people who do too much anyways. And I'm not gonna lie, if I had more time in my day, I would probably use it sleeping and not practicing a game. As much as video games are tons of fun, practicing means attempting to get better at a specific element of the game, and that is ultimately work. You will find that that is a less fun version of playing video games. It's just, this is often something that someone who does too much would want. And not only probably isn't gonna happen, but if it did, might be better to spend simply resting. I'm not saying that's definite. It's kind of an individual thing, but yeah, don't just make the assumption that if you had more time, that's the key. And number 6 is not having a better PC or mouse or keyboard or graphics card or something involving your hardware. Now, I'm not going to tell you that there is no instance in which your gaming hardware causes some kind of problem with your game that makes you lose. Like, I've certainly had temporary freezes that mess up a match. But if you find yourself very often saying like, oh, if I just had a better PC or mouse or keyboard, it's probably not going to make you into the crazy good player that you think you have lurking around inside. Video games are not something that just appeared out of nature. We do not have instincts which make us immediately good at them. Now, it's not impossible that getting slightly better equipment will make it so that you have better reaction time or are a little bit better at something, but it won't make you way better. It's not the reason that you constantly lose. And on the flip side, them having that equipment is not the reason they constantly win. If somebody's got good equipment and they just generally trounce people, it's probably because they're good at the game, not because they have that equipment. Unless they're cheating, which screw them if that's the case. But that's also not really what we're talking about. Really, it's time and dedication. And somebody with the money to buy better equipment probably has more money to have time to dedicate, but it's not the equipment. At number 5, one last round and then I'll go to bed, and then I'll go to work, and then I'll eat dinner, and then I'll do homework. One last round and then. No, that is not how that works. That is you playing the game all night. That is you playing the game and not eating dinner. Oh, not eating dinner is a big one, actually. I've done that more than a few times. And don't even get me started on homework. I don't have to deal with homework at this point in my life, but I've done that before, needless to say. The thing is, it's good to have a hobby. It's good to occupy your free time with something that makes you feel fulfilled and happy. Just to have something that's enjoyable to do is obviously a good thing. But when it starts interfering with other things and you're telling yourself it's not, that's where we start having problems. I think everybody has like a story they can tell that is relatable to this point specifically, but the ultimate end of the story is you just gotta stop playing and move on to the thing that you're supposed to do. And number 4 is the idea that racing games can make you a better driver in real life. Like, to some extent, yes, there are people who play racing simulators and have extremely expensive setups in which they are a lot closer to driving in real life. However, you're generally not driving like a racing game in real life, for one, so even if it was a one-to-one experience, the style of driving is not necessarily the same thing. For 2, there are no consequences of any life or death variety for driving badly in a racing game. There are consequences, obviously, in real life, and a false sense of confidence because you press left to right on a joystick better than other people do can translate to some serious problems. Now again, there are people with expensive setups that learn to drive virtually and end up actually racing cars. But I would argue that even racing a car is not necessarily a completely applicable skill to driving in real life, because again, driving in real life is not about taking risks for a reward. It's about getting from point A to point B. The mentality is completely different. Now, that's not to say it isn't good to react quickly while driving. That certainly is a good thing, and that can be helped a little bit by video games. But for yourself and the safety of others, don't consider these things applicable. And number 3 is the idea you will never rage quit in a video game. Now, I don't know how you can tell yourself you're never going to rage quit in a video game. That's like saying you know exactly how frustrated you can get at all times in your entire life. Now, there are game developers that seem to thrive on creating new situations that will force other people to become frustrated. An element of their creativity is specifically coming up with these types of scenarios. We call them sadists. But in truth, you're going to come across a situation at some point when you are losing so badly or you have no idea what to do. You're just up against a brick wall and you realize you're lying to yourself if you think you can get beyond this point, at least right now, and you rage quit. Like, sometimes you really have to think about it too. You're not going to get anywhere as full of rage as you are. That's why you rage quit. At times, it may even just be to calm down. I have to stop right now. And that's not a bad thing. It's just don't tell yourself you're never going to do it. Yes, it can be discourteous to other people if you're playing with other people, but it can also be discourteous to continue playing with other people if all you're going to do is yell and scream too. There's sort of a cost-benefit analysis that you should do before rage quitting. At number 2, I'm sure you've said this to yourself before if you've ever engaged in this activity. I am, of course, talking about the phrase, I will eventually play all of these games I bought on the Steam sale. Now, Steam sales can be totally insane. You can end up with large numbers of games for very, very small amounts of money. You can end up getting a game for like 15% of the cost of the game. And people will wait the entire year for a Steam sale and buy a ton of games, and then act like they're gonna play all of them. You're not gonna play all of them. A lot of these games take tens of hours to complete, some of them even over 100. And most people don't play games like they're full-time jobs. They are my full-time job, and I don't play them like they're a full-time job. A lot of the work I do is actually figuring out what to say about them. That's not to say there aren't people that play games like a full-time job, but most people with stuff to do don't. You probably have a full-time job, for instance, or you go to school. If you have more than one 100-plus hour game a year, that's really impressive. And then finally, at number 1 is blaming teammates for almost every loss. Now, if you have ever played a game where you have random matchmaking and you stay on the team for multiple matches and you've lost multiple times, you've seen someone do this. So you know how irritating it is. Don't do this. Because not only do you know that they are being a jerk to everybody on the team, but they are also fooling themselves. Yes, it's out of frustration, probably from losing quite a lot, and that's understandable, but it's not just a rationale that could potentially prevent them from actually trying to get better at the game, it's also demoralizing to everybody else on the team. Like, that person isn't going to adequately communicate during the course of the match if their MO is just to tell everybody that they're doing badly and they're ruining their ratio for the day or whatever. If you see somebody doing that, just go ahead and look through their record for previous days. It's probably not a lot different. That person is sucking the energy out of the team, demoralizing them. Don't do that. Don't let yourself get to that point. Be encouraging and cool about stuff. If there's a mistake, fine. Accept it and move on. On the flip side, if you blame yourself for the loss in a team game, that's also not a really great response. It's good to just discuss, as you're playing the game, what's going on in the game. A my bad here and there is helpful, as are actually talking to people, giving them tips and pointers, but also having some humility about your own limitations. Well, that's all for today. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe, don't forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon, you can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.